Welcome back, my small engine enthusiasts. Today we're going to start putting the kit onto the 29-inch Mongoose mountain bike. As I said in the previous video, in part one of this video is more so for the newer guys that's getting into the hobbies. Of course, everyone is invited to watch along, so hope you enjoy and maybe even learn something if you don't already know it. First off, I always put the rear sprocket on the mountain bike or whatever bike I'm building first. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rag joint set up and get it put on. And I'm not going to do step by step for this, but you guys can pretty much get the idea of what I'm doing by the video. A lot of bike guys don't like using the rag joint, as we call them. For the sprocket, they'll use a hub adapter, which is fine. I've never used one. I've always went with this rag joint. Is I found if you keep them serviced with the rest of the bike, keep them tight, you don't really have much problems out of them. As far as the braking spokes, I'm pretty sure you're going to break spokes regardless if you got thin spokes on your rear wheels. So they're just really hard, not meant to take the torque of a gas engine. So the thicker spokes you got, the better off you'll be. Now after I get all 9 bolts set into place into the sprocket, I put a piece of tape over top of them to keep them held into place while I do the next step to this process. After taping bolts in place, I set the wheel up and start putting on the rear clamps, I guess is what I call them, and then the nut, lock washer and nut that goes on afterwards. Once all 9 lock washers and nuts are on, I take the tape off the front and then start proceeding to tighten down all 9 bolts in a crisscross fashion as to make the sprocket go on nice and flat as possible. Now that the sprocket is tightened down, I give the wheel a spin to make sure it is spinning true and not wobbly. Now on to the engine mounts. The front mount, I will be using the universal mount instead of the regular clamp that comes with it because of the oversized down tube. And I'll also be putting blue Loctite on the studs that go into the engine to make sure those don't back out with all the vibration. And I removed the studs from the rear mount on the engine to do the same thing with the studs on them to put blue Loctite and make sure they don't back out on me. To remove the studs, I'm doing a simple double nut technique where you screw one nut down to the other one, then back the bottom nut out, and it will actually remove the stud itself instead of the nut coming off. I actually forgot that I had this square big head to put on the 80cc engine from my performance test on these heads, and might as well put it on this engine, since we know for a fact they help keep them cool. Using regular nuts first, I torqued down the head and then put the acorn nuts on top as a decorative piece. Now getting ready to set the engine in place, I've grinded down the nipples that was sticking up, I guess you could call them, on the down tube that was meant to hold down the water bottle bracket if you had one. And right off the bat, I'm seeing a problem with the clearance for the carburetor, demanding an offset intake tube, unfortunately. But we gotta do what we gotta do. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I'm about out of time. Get the intake tube in and we'll finish up this build shortly. So thank you guys ever so much for watching. I appreciate you all. Ride safe, guys.